Welcome, guys, back to the Grateful Living podcast. Today, I'm thankful to have David Allen with me. David is most well known for the international best-selling book, Getting Things Done: The Art of Stress-Free Productivity, a book that has sold over 1.6 million copies and has been translated in over 28 plus countries. David is also the creator of the GTD Methodology. For the last 35 years, he's consulted, trained, and coached corporate managers and CEOs at some of the most prestigious corporations in the US and around the world. David, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure, Arnaud. Thanks for the invitation.
Of course, thankful to have you on. For the people out there that don't know you as well, can you kind of take us back to the beginning, where you grew up, your family situation, what type of kid you were?
Well, I grew up in Texas and Louisiana in the southern part of the U.S., uh, mostly Louisiana, Shreveport, where I went through my school before college. I had an older brother. My dad died when I was young, at age 9 or whatever. My mom pretty much raised me and my brother. Uh, I did interesting things, made good grades, was a champion debater, was a uh, I was an actor sort of in the local community theaters as a kid. Um, was an exchange student in high school. Lived in Zurich, Switzerland, for a year with a Swiss family,
Yeah.
and then went to a strange little college that had no grades. It was design your own education at one of those experimental colleges back in the '60s. So that was that's kind of how I grew up. A short version of a long story, but
Yeah, yeah.
that
I'm
was it.
curious. I'm curious. Your father passing when you were 9. Um, how was that for you emotionally and things of that nature?
No big deal. We didn't really have a strong relationship. He'd been rather ill for most of the time I remember, but we didn't have that strong a relationship. So, to me, it was just okay. Now what? So it wasn't. I didn't have any big trauma about it at all.
Yeah, yeah. How did the exchange student experience? Is that something that really brought into your horizons as a young person?
Sure. Well, it opened me up to sort of the humanities and sort of liberal arts. I didn't know. Come on, you grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana. There's not many options if you're either a lawyer or you're an accountant or you're a teacher or whatever. So there, back then in that environment, there weren't, consultant. What's that? You know, there weren't a lot of options about what to do. So obviously, spending a year in Switzerland, uh, in one of the sort of cultural capitals of the world, really, in a way. I went to school in a Swiss school that was 3 blocks from the Cafe Odeon, which is where Dadaism started, and where Jung wrote, and where all kinds of things went on there. I was 1 block away from the Kunsthaus in Zurich, and a room full of Monet's water lilies. You know, so kind of opened me up to a whole new world that I really wasn't that familiar with as an option. So it sort of it turned my thinking into, wow, well, liberal arts or studying philosophy or history or culture or something like that was more interesting to me than anything else at the time.
Yeah.
So it did change me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. As you mentioned, you went to what is now called today the New College of Florida and studied history there. I guess what was your mindset going into college and what you were looking to get out of it at that point?
Well, I'd tried to study philosophy. Once I sort of got turned on to that, the whole idea of liberal arts and so forth, and so got very bored trying to read Plato and Aristotle and all that stuff. But anyway, so I started out as a philosophy major, but then it's kind of interesting because I got a little bit bored because the philosophers all seemed to prove their original hypothesis using their original hypothesis. Well, it doesn't seem to be particularly interesting. But I had a great coach, a great friend and mentor was my academic advisor, who was the history professor there at New College. And he turned me on to history of thought, history of thinking, and the history of philosophy. So instead of studying philosophy, I was more interested in studying the philosophers, why they thought the way they did, why, and my mentor, my teacher, turned me on to a book, The Decline of the West by Oswald Spengler, a great German writer and book and whatever. And it was about, he didn't use the words back then. We didn't use those words back then, but it was about paradigms, the cultural paradigms that then, if there was a paradigm in the culture about how people thought, how they kind of the DNA, the signature of the culture, it affected art, math, science, architecture, philosophy, writing, anything. And there seemed to be a signature in different cultures. And I was fascinated by that. Wow. So that the way we think, the way we act, the way we perceive things has a lot to do with the sort of the DNA or the signature of the paradigms that we either grew up in or that we're living in. So that was fascinating to me, sort of studying models that affected perception and performance, I guess.
Yeah. I believe if I read correctly, you got married around this time period. Is that true?
Well, I've had 4 marriages, so yeah, I got married in 1968.
Okay. As you look back, is there any advice you have for people on relationships and marriage or divorce or anything like that?
Wow, that's a big question. uh, I would say just trust your heart, trust whatever, that sort of inner small voice that everybody has somewhere in there, and stop and listen to it. Is this the right thing to do? Is this appropriate? Is this on your path in terms of what you're about? It's the best advice I could give.
Yeah, yeah. So, I think after that you entered a PhD program at Cal Berkeley for American history. At that time, do you think your mindset was, to go into academia and be a professor?
Yeah, I thought that's pretty much if you're an intellectual historian, that's what else can you do?
Yeah.
So that was pretty much it. So yeah, that was my direction at that time. I changed direction because while I was there, this is the '60s in Berkeley. I was like, I got much more interested in sort of my own self development, my own exploration personally. So instead of studying people who were enlightened, I said, well, let me go find my own. So hopped off, dropped out of graduate school, and went on a big self exploration journey.
Yeah. I'm curious, a lot of the, you know, articles that I read about this time period say, the life you were living was phony is how you kind of characterized it as. Um what made you have such a, you know, um change in mindset? You were supposedly you sold a lot of your things, and things of that nature. Um what led
Well, I
you?
had, I you know, I had a, I don't know if I call him a mentor, but yeah, he was a guy who was sort of way ahead of me in terms of the self-development process, who sort of took to me, offered to teach me karate. And he was quite an unusual guy, and sort of turned me on to the life of adventure, and that I could do that. So, that was a big. Uh, so that helped a lot, was to find somebody who got that, and obviously it rang my bell, and so yeah, I didn't really know who I was. I'd sort of grown up in life trying to please everybody because I hated conflict, and so I was the best chameleon in the world. I could be whoever you wanted me to be, to sort of please people around me. So I made good grades. I was good friends with with the hoodlums. I was good friends with the academics. I was good friends with everybody. But who
Yeah.
was David? Who was I? Who am I? And so sort of getting onto that path to sort of discover myself had a lot to do with what did I really want to do, as opposed to what did I think other people wanted me to do.
Yeah.
And that's a big change.
Yeah.
Didn't
Uh,
happen overnight. It sort of just morphed on me, over 2 or 3 years, where that I discovered, this is not the life I want to live. Let me go find the life I want to live, and be willing to do that without anybody else's approval. Big change.
yeah. Yeah. It, is there
Did that ever happen to you?
me?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, the reason I started this podcast was I lost a close friend of mine to suicide, and it did change my way of thinking in terms of um trusting the society that we've built as the best teacher. Um, because clearly as a society we had failed him in terms of teaching him coping skills and things of that nature. And so I've gone on to do this somewhat entrepreneurial um, side project as a result of that, to really learn from people in different walks of life, both about their personal and professional journeys. um so that's been my journey.
Cool.
I'm curious, um for the younger people listening to this out here, is there a way to figure out your authentic self?
Well, something that took me many years to learn. Probably in my 30s did I start to become aware that there was a still small voice internally that you can access, the higher self, or whatever you want, your soul or your spirit or whatever you want to call that thing that actually loves you, has your best interest in mind, and is willing to talk to you if you're willing to listen. But it doesn't force itself on you. You actually have to relax and stop and be quiet and ask, that internal part of you. But I didn't learn that to my 30s, and so if there were any advice I would give anybody listening to this, it would be, hey, go pay attention. All you have to do is stop,
Yeah.
breathe, relax, let go, and listen to the still small voice. Now, it may take you a while to learn which voices to pay attention to. We've all got committees in our head, and they're
Yeah.
throwing plates at each other sometimes. In terms of, wait a minute, yeah, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. No, that's not a good thing. No, that's a good thing. No, that's what you need to do. So learning to sort of um, parse those and pay attention to the one that is the really most substantive voice to listen to. That would be the best advice I could give anybody.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to talk about this, but I read in some of the 2006 7 articles that at this time your friends saw a major change in your behavior, and um, for a period of time you were institutionalized, maybe for heroin use. Um, is there anything on this time period in your life that you'd like to talk about?
No, it's just, I was like exploring lots of different things. I didn't do any of that to escape. I did it to explore.
Mm.
I was fascinated by what's on the other side. Who are we? What's this bigger thing that runs us? And led me down some false paths and ran off the rails for a little bit. But
Yeah.
nothing where I could say about that other than it was just exploration.
Yeah. As you left your PhD, uh, were there people in your close circle, maybe your mom or anybody else, that were questioning your decision making? And if so, how did you feel confident in leaving Berkeley?
No, 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 nobody really was that invested in what I was doing other than me. So it was a, it was a, I say easy. It was a challenging transformation, but not because of anybody else out there in the world. It was because that's not what I want to be doing. That's not who I am, or that's not. There's something else for me to be doing. I didn't know exactly what it was, but that wasn't it. So I just kind of jumped off the end of the pier and hoped the water wasn't too deep or too shallow that I landed in.
Yeah, yeah,
But I've done that several times in my life.
yeah. Um, After this period, you do many different jobs. I read you might have had 35 jobs before you were 35. Um, I'm curious, especially at that time, it was very common for people to be at one job for 40 years. So, did you feel self-conscious about being totally different?
No, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I just need to pay the rent. So what do? You
Mm.
get a job, pay the rent. So, it's kind of like, okay, what's the best job I can find around me right now that can help me pay the rent?
Yeah.
So it
Uh,
wasn't a big deal. No, that wasn't a big deal. It was just, that's how come I was just a really good number two guy. So I helped a lot of, I had friends who were starting their own businesses and had small businesses that I could show up and help. Uh, and so that's how I got a lot of those jobs. I was just a good number two guy. So I'd go walk in and go, okay, what do we do? And how are we doing it? And can we do it easier? Can we leave earlier? So I was Mr. Now they call that process improvement. I was just lazy. It's like, okay, come on, what are we doing here? And how can we make that a little easier? How can we do that? And uh, then I'd help them fix it and improve their processes. And then I get bored and go get another job. So that's how I wound up with a whole bunch of them. I just didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I just helped a bunch of folks do what they were doing. And then I discovered, hey, they call people that something and they pay people to do that. It's called consultant. Oh, what? Oh, geez. What an idea. So in 1982, I hung out my shingle, Allen Associates, and I said, okay, let me see if I could just sell myself on a project by project basis for
yeah.
people interested in what I might be able to bring to them. That's how I got into this game.
Yeah. Um, so I have here 1971 is when you met John Rodger, and I think earlier you talked about meeting Michael Bookbinder. I'm curious, first, like, were you just looking to meet a lot of people? And then two, how did you, decide, to get close to John or and trust his, however you want to, his visions of life or his coachings of life, or I'm just curious, for the people, the young people out there, should they be, you know going to various seminars and trying to meet people, or how do you think of that time period in your life?
Yeah, it was just follow my intuition, follow my hunches. Hey, this looks like somebody that knows something more than I do, and I kind of resonate with them. So let me hang out, see what I can learn.
Yeah.
And that I don't think there's anything new or different about that, other than kind of follow your hunches, find somebody. I think we all can learn from people around us. Uh, Not that what they're doing is what you need to do, but they may have a piece of something, that is important to you or that resonates with you. And that's what I've done. Keep doing it. I won't stop doing that. Like,
Yeah.
why not? And so, both those guys were big influences in my life because of what they had, their experience, and then what they were willing to share with me and my connection with them. So, you know, no other advice than that. There wasn't I didn't have some big strategic plan. Let me go find key people to hang out with. No, I just happened.
Yeah. Um, so I believe 1978, John starts Insight Seminars, and you become a facilitator and Insight trainer. Um, I guess how did this experience help you? Do you recommend other people trying to get into like the leadership space to join someone who's already doing something? Is that a good way to get into the space?
Sure, sure. Why not? I just say pay attention to whatever things kind of ring your bell. You know, you may be attracted to some kind of people, some sort of thing that they're doing, and not others. Just pay attention to that. That's all I did.
Yeah. Um, there was one turning point at least where I think it was a Lockheed manager wanted you to personally come to his company outside of Insight seminars and just be David Allen. Um, I guess talk to that us about that process and um, how you did, you know, uh, advising Lockheed.
Well, I just uncovered stuff for myself that worked in terms of best practices to keep myself clear. Once I'd been trained in the martial arts and doing meditation and spiritual practices and whatever, I mean, the whole idea of clear space in your head was a very valuable thing, something I loved to experience and maintain. Then as my world got a bit more complex, and busy in my consulting practice, I said, how do I keep straight about all that? And I had a couple of mentors that taught me some pretty big pieces of what then became part of the methodology I sort of formulated over all these years, and keep myself clear, relaxed, focused, in control of a busy life. And then I started to use the techniques that I'd found for myself with my consulting clients, and it turned out that those techniques did the same thing for them, and it helped them think about their business better, think about their life better, think about all kinds of things better, and be in a clearer space. So that became a big key part of what I was doing. And then, a guy named Michael Winston, who was head of HR for Lockheed at the time, saw what I was doing. He said, "Gee, David, we need that in our whole corporation. Can you design something around what you've come up with here so we can maybe reach a lot of people with your model anyway, as opposed to one-on-one?" So I then spent time designing a training seminar, a 2.5 day personal productivity for mid to senior level people using these methodologies, and it worked. So that sort of thrust me into the corporate training world. Could have fooled me as an
Yeah.
American intellectual history major in Berkeley in '68. If you'd have told me I'd have been thrust into the corporate training world, I'd said, "What are you smoking? Come on, grow up." But turns out that was the ripest audience for what I'd come up with, and they were willing to pay for it. So that became then the start of I guess really the real essence of what then became my career, which is, teaching about these productivity best practices.
Yeah. I'm curious, I've seen, whether it's Lockheed or, I've seen you speak at Google and some other companies. Um, were you like in terms of creating a great seminar that was helpful to the employees, you know, I guess did you ever feel self-conscious that like, for example, you had never worked at Google or you had never worked at Lockheed, like so you didn't have the understanding of what the corporate culture was or and if
No,
not,
I
like
didn't. No, I
okay.
didn't need to. No, what I came up with was universal. Anybody who's busy that wants to have a clear head to focus on the right stuff. That's what my stuff is all about. It didn't matter where you were, what you did, what you dealt with, what company you were in, what kind of work you did. If you just wanted to be clearer, I can help you do that with this, set of best practices. So it didn't bother me or didn't
Mhm.
matter to me what company I was in. Or, I mean, believe me, I've been in hundreds, and dealt with thousands of people at multiple levels. We're doing this work for 9-year-olds now, as well as for CEOs. So it's all the same stuff. Get stuff out of your head. Stop using your head as an office. It's a crappy office. Make decisions about what it is that has your attention, and then get specific about what the outcomes and the next actions are of those things you're committed to do. Park those reminders in some sort of trusted external brain that you then review and reflect on a regular basis. Keep it current. And that's going to produce the same results for anybody: more clarity, more focus, more control, more sense of comfort about what you're doing and what you're not doing.
So
So
we're
once I discovered that, it's like, who cared where it was? Just who was interested, who was willing to buy it.
were you teaching like the principles of GTD back in the 1980s?
Yeah, for
Wow,
sure.
that's cool. Um, 1991, I believe it is, you got married to Catherine, um, who you've still been with. Just, you know, if you could talk to us about what she means to you and any advice you have to anyone on finding the one.
Well, being love is easy. Being a friend is hard. So creating friendship or somebody that you can be friends with is actually a more challenging event than just being in love. Being in love is okay. Yeah, what's that great song called? I fall in love too fast. You know. Yeah. So, and nothing wrong with that. That's great. It's the kind of the butterflies of life. Yay. But being a friend with somebody, and Catherine and I, we were friends for 4 or 5 years, even before we got together, sort of romantically or relationship wise. And then, turns out after 3 marriages, I figured I wasn't very good at it, so I sort of gave it up. And then I said, yeah, but I'd like somebody to share my life with. Wouldn't that be cool? Somebody that I could, go to an art museum with, and somebody I could cook dinner with, and somebody would, so that was something that I wanted or missed. And then I found the perfect person, that fit that role. But she sort of had the same inclinations herself. But we still work at it, but it's been 31 years, and we're still working it out.
Yeah. Um, I'm curious, like, you being in the self-development space, um, at that time, like, did you have a set philosophy on life and um was it hard to
Nah,
like maybe compromise in your personal life on even
nah,
with friends or things like that or no?
no, no,
No.
nothing comes to mind about any of that, other than just trying to stay true to myself and trying to say, okay, well, what do I need to do next? And it doesn't mean that life was easy. Come on, I had tons of challenges, things I had to grapple with, deal with, get better at, whatever. So, I think that the trick is not to make life easy. Life is here to experience and then expand and express, in that process. If life was easy, you'd never grow. You'd never really, extend or expand yourself in ways that you maybe, the part of your game in terms of what you ought to be doing. So, just learning to navigate that from the driver's seat, from a victim seat, is a big change.
Yeah. 1994, you co-found Actioneer with Tom Hagen, creating productivity tools for Palm
Wow,
Pilot.
you've done a lot of research on it.
I guess I'm curious, this was obviously a major change from being a consultant now to, an entrepreneur and into more corporate business. Are there any lessons from this time period that you would like to pass on?
No, nothing comes to mind. Just trust your gut, follow your and course correct as you get better data.
Yeah.
A lot of some of the biggest mistakes I made was making decisions before I should have, without doing true due diligence, and whether that was a person to hire, that was a really thing to do, but because I thought that I had to, given a time pressure, for either money reasons or organizational reasons or whatever. So now, if I gave myself some advice back then, I'd say relax and wait a little bit, be a little more patient, and be willing to do a little more due diligence on those decisions.
Yeah.
But it got me where I am, which is not bad.
Yeah.
So you can't deny the rungs of the ladder that got you where you are. So I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah. 1997, you, I believe, formally start the David Allen Company. We've talked a little bit about this, but I guess in terms of the business aspect and, having, seminars to lead and things like that, was that something that you did a lot of reach out for and created relationships, to be able to do it at a full-time level? Or at that time, were you already, because of your reputation, most people were coming to you?
Well, in the beginning, I just followed my nose. Whoever wanted something, I'd go deliver it and do it and see what showed up. So I never did any marketing. I never did any, I would just pick up the phone. So it was all referral based stuff, at least for the first many years. And then just building a staff around me that could handle the referred, request for our work, our coaching. My consulting turned more into coaching 101 with mid to senior level people at their desk about implementing this methodology that I came up with. And so literally thousands of hours I spent 101 with some of the best and brightest. So at some point, 20 years later, somebody said, "Hey, David, you ought to write the book." I go, "What? Write a book? Oh my God." And it took me that long to figure out that what I'd figured out, nobody else seemed to have figured out the way I figured it out, and that it was bulletproof. I tested this out in some of the most challenging environments you could ever imagine to bring this stuff in, and went viral in those environments with some of the busiest and brightest and best folks. I'd coach people making a lot more money than I'll ever see in my life. Sitting next to them, and they go, "Oh my God, thank you, David. Oh my God, that's great stuff." So, it was just kind of following my nose. And so there was no big strategic plan about it. I'm not really an entrepreneur. I'm not really that aspirational about this. I'm more an educator than anything else. But I just said, hey, it would be cool to be able to buy the kind of wine I want to buy and have the lifestyle I want to have. So maybe is there some way to maintain a business model around, what it is I came up with? So that's been a lot the last 20 years.
How did you set your prices, especially, obviously 2001, Getting Things Done comes out, is that something, as you got more requests, you just increased your price, or how did you do that
Yeah. I
aspect?
just said, how much money do I need to give you my full attention? And that number's changed, obviously, over all these years. I think in the beginning, it's like, oh, give me $500 for a week and I'll give you my full attention. Now you need to give me 30,000 euros, for an hour and a half keynote to get my full attention. So just how much do I need so I can give you my full attention? That's really how I've priced myself for all these years.
Yeah.
And I have two prices right now, retail and free. I do a lot of pro bono stuff just for free, simply because, hey, they're doing good work. I like to help people doing good work. So I'm happy to do that. But by the way, it's worth 30,000 euros for an hour and a half of my time.
Yeah.
Just be aware of that. But so, and then lots of negotiation of various, parts of that in between. But that's kind of the basis of how I've done this over all these years.
Your wife Catherine was involved in the business. I'm curious, was that a transition for you guys to at all separate business from personal and handling any
No,
conflicts there? No.
it's all still the same stuff.
Nice.
If you have a life partner that you're sharing a business with, it's tough. It either works or doesn't. If it works, it's great. If it doesn't, it's awful.
Yeah.
So luckily we made it work, and it's been great.
When did you get to the point that you hired your first employee? Was it just at a certain revenue level, or how did you go
No,
about
just
that?
no, just because a client called and needed work, and I didn't have the time to do it. So I had some people who are around me who knew of what I was doing and knew what this model was, and they were capable very quickly to be able to be coaches and could deliver this. So I just sort of reached out to people who were already around me and around my stuff that knew it and that I trusted, and just sort of ramp them up so that they could walk in and do the work. My own criteria was, look, if they call you back, you're great. If they don't, didn't work.
Were you ever worried about people calling or copying you and your, you know,
Oh, come on. That's been a legal issue for 35 years. The pirates out there doing GTD. I do GTD. I can do this stuff, whatever. And we've had to handle all the legal aspects of that just to maintain the brand and make sure that they don't sully the brand in terms of GTD. So yeah, it's a constant. Come on. The Russians, the Chinese, they all steal everything. You know, we just try to deal with that as best we can.
yeah,
But imitation is the biggest form of flattery. So
yeah,
great that people think this is good enough to copy. So yay. But again, just mainly from a business standpoint, to protect the brand. We have to maintain some legality and some parameters around that.
yeah. So 2001 is when you come out with Getting Things Done, the art of stress-free productivity. I'm curious, the process for making this book. Can you talk about that? Like, did a publisher come to you when you decided, or was this self, or how did this come
No, no,
about?
no. I had no idea. When people coached me that I should write the book, how do you write a book? It actually took me 4 years. It took me a year to try to figure out, how do you frame this? Do you get an agent? Do you find a publisher? What do you do to begin with? So it took me a year to sort of figure out that, and with some good coaching, get a good agent, which I've done, and she's still there, for me. and then write a business proposal. No publisher is going to publish a book unless they think they can make money on it. So you actually have to write a business proposal, which was a challenging but very educational thing to do, to write a business proposal about a book you want to write. Who's this for? Why is it different? What's new about this? Why would somebody buy this? And answer those questions. So I had to do all that. And then write a first draft. The first draft didn't work. It wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. So it took a whole year to write the first draft, and I threw it away. It took another year to write the second draft, which worked. Then that became the book. So it took 4 years from the time I pulled the trigger on this to get it on the shelf in Barnes and Noble.
I guess, GTD says a lot, but if there's someone who's not aware of your work, I guess, are there a couple of things that come to mind in terms of previewing what the book is about and what it teaches you?
Yeah. Oh, no, it's easy. Your head's a shitty office. Stop using your head to remember, remind, prioritize, and manage things. You need to get the stuff out of your head, clarify exactly what you're going to do about those things, and then park the results of that thinking in some sort of a trusted external brain that you review and keep current. It's like your calendar, or just like your grocery list. The same thing. It's just about life and work. So if you're doing that for your calendar and your grocery list, why aren't you doing that about your life? That's basically it.
I'm curious, as it became an international bestseller, I'm sure there were a lot of opportunities coming your way. Did you ever struggle with like doing too much or working too hard, and not caring for your personal health?
No,
You always
it's
set
all
boundaries?
life and work is all the same thing. There's no difference. Work is just stuff to do that's not done yet. So I still need to manage my health, so I have enough energy to do whatever it is I want to do. So there's no distinction between those two things. It's just like, okay, yeah. Like in a company, you need to manage sales, you need to manage customer service, you need to manage IT, you need to manage quality control. So you don't get rid of that. Those are all things you just need to handle to do your day to day in terms of whatever you're doing.
Yeah. Um, I get it, I saw by like 2006 you had 32 employees. That aspect of the business, um, were you managing employees and stuff like that, or did you have that delegated?
Yeah, no, I was managing pretty much most of that. And then I tried to hire somebody to sort of run all that so I could write the next book I was writing in or whatever. It didn't work. It was a pretty agonizing 3-year period where I just hired the wrong person and they didn't really fit the DNA of our company. And so it was painful and expensive. But yeah, so doing that. And then about 10 years ago, we ran across holacracy. So we could create a self-organizing organization. So I didn't have to have a hierarchy. We didn't have to have, titles. We just had roles and accountabilities. Who's responsible for that? Who's responsible for that? And also the business changed a lot. At some point, finding the right partners around the world to help distribute our stuff, we were able to sort of backsize ourselves to basically an IP licensing company. So we're down to 5 people now instead of 50.
Yeah.
But that's great. More profitable, more fun, less effort. But it took a long time to get there.
I'm curious, a lot of the research that we read today comes from, you know, people that do, like scientific data research, and a lot of the things that you um, have been able to write have come from personal, work experience. Um, do you have any thoughts on the experience versus empirical research slash evidence, and coming to conclusions?
No, I just came to all my stuff with street smarts. It was all just experiential. I've never had any traditional or formal education in time management, productivity, business, or psychology. I just came up with all my stuff in terms of what really worked for me and for other people. Now, it turns out that in the last 10 years, a lot of the cognitive scientists that have uncovered a lot of the things that validate, that your head's a crappy office, and you can manage about four things max in terms of your head before you start to lose cognitive ability. So who knew? So mine was all just personal experience.
Um, one of the best examples that I'd love if you could talk about it, was when people write down like mom on their to-do list. And can you talk about that example of what's wrong with
Yeah.
writing that down?
Well, they grab something that has their attention, but they haven't clarified it yet. What are you going to do about mom? Yeah, you had one. Why'd you write it? Oh, her birthday's coming. Yeah, right. What are you going to do about her birthday? I don't know. So looking at mom can sometimes produce as much pressure as it relieved writing it down, simply because you're reminding yourself there's stuff that you haven't finished thinking or deciding about. So that, the second step in the process I uncovered, which is you got to capture it. Yeah, mom, got it. Now clarify, what does that mean? What are you going to do about it? What's the outcome you're committed to? Oh, celebrate mom's birthday. Great. And what's the next step? Oh yeah, I should call my sister. Great. So mom is not either an action or an outcome. It's a reminder of something that you still need to decide or think about. So to decide and think about, and then organize those reminders in some trusted place. And you'll see a reminder to call your sister whenever you have time. It's kind of Armand, I hate to say this, but it's kind of a duh factor, right? So
Yeah.
what are you going to do about mom? What are you going to do about mom's birthday? I don't know. And even if you don't know, it's okay to say, look into something for mom for her birthday. Fine. Now you got a project. Now you got something to do. What's next that you would need to do to look into it? So it's not about working harder. It's not about, doing more. It's about being clear about what your commitments are. And very few people are very clear about all their commitments.
You've advised a lot of businesses and CEOs and things of that nature. What do you think they most resonate with in terms of all the aspects of GTD?
Getting more space. They get more room to be more creative, more strategic, more innovative, more of service. They get more room. You don't need time. You can't manage time. You don't mismanage 5 minutes to come up with 6 or 4.5. Time just is. It's an important factor. But it's about how do you manage you during the 6 minutes you have or the 5 minutes you have. And so feeling confident about your choices about what you do and also what you don't do is really critical to be present. And the mindfulness people are all teaching about being present right now. I learned that 45 years ago in the martial arts. Nothing new about that. Focus on your breathing gives you more present, for sure. So the whole idea about being present then makes you more confident about your choices about what you do and what you don't do, about your work, your life, or whatever. So that's what you were asking, that's really the answer. And that's what I came up with, was the algorithm about what's the formula that you need to apply so you can get rid of the distractions, so you can be present with whatever decisions you're making.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of business leaders come to you with this, but what's your advice on someone that comes to you and says, they have too many commitments, or, their calendar's booked for 2 months? How do you approach helping an individual like that?
Yeah, give me a list of all your commitments and let me see your calendar. Put them in front of your face. Okay, are these what you want to be doing? He says, what? I don't tell people what they should have on their calendar. I don't tell people what they should have on their list. I just get them to make the list. Most people don't have it. Again, it's all spinning around in their head, which is a crappy office. Your brain did not evolve to remind, prioritize, manage relationships with more than four things. That's it.
Yeah. One aspect I really liked was thinking about, and it sounds very simple, but thinking about the purpose of everything that you're doing. So like the purpose of a meeting, or the purpose of um, an action plan. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I uncovered or discovered or recognized 6 levels of commitments we have with ourselves. And that could be as an enterprise in a company or just for yourself personally. What's the purpose of your life? What's the purpose of your company? What are your core principles? Right? That's probably the top driver of your priorities. You don't want to be all purpose, right? But then dropping it to a more operational level, well, what would the vision be of you fulfilling your purpose? Where do you want to be 5 years from now? What are you trying to do, Arvon? Why are you having this podcast, by the way? I can ask you why. Why are you having this conversation with me? Right? So once you answer that, then you say, okay, so my ideal scene of doing that, or whatever this is leading me to in terms of wild success, what do I need to accomplish over the next 3 to 24 months? What are my objectives, goals? That's a third level. Then you have a level down called, what do you need to maintain? How's your health? How's your vitality? How's your finances? How's your technology? How's your dog? How's your relationship? And those are things you need to manage as well. Then you have all the projects you have. I got to fix this tooth that hurts. I need to hire a vice president of marketing. I need to figure out if we should adopt or get divorced. You have all that stuff. Then you have all the things you need to do about all those things, the emails to send, the things to surf on the web, the things to talk to your life partner about, the things to draft a document about.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get any simpler than this. I just started to recognize these are all the different levels of commitments we have with ourselves and with other people. So getting clear about that inventory is never had anybody get clear about that total inventory that didn't feel a whole lot better and feel a lot better about what they're going to do next week.
Yeah. What I really enjoyed was that purpose level question of, especially if you have, like monetary or um, you know, buying things goals, is like your question, what is that Porsche going to provide you? And if it's just freedom and fun, can't you do that today in some way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the experience you're looking for? Not just the thing, but what do you think the thing will give you? And once you focus on the experience, then that becomes a lot easier to live your life and manage it appropriately.
Do you have any advice on, if you're struggling with purpose, how to figure that out?
Yeah, just make a bad choice and then course correct tomorrow to get better data. All minds are just working hypotheses of like, man, until I get better data, I think here's what I'm about. So relax about it. Don't put any of this in concrete.
Yeah. Um, well, I guess, as you look at your life, and since implementing it, is there anything that I don't know, like if I guess if there's a one first thing to do, is there something that comes to mind?
Yeah, relax, let go, let God.
Yeah, awesome. Um, in terms of you know, philosophies, books, or resources that have shaped you, does anything come to mind?
Oh, dozens and dozens and dozens of books over the years that have helped me. So I couldn't pick one. I just say somebody walk into your local bookstore. Support your local bookstores, by the way. Walk into your local bookstore and just see where your intuition leads you to what kind of book. That's what I've done.
Uh,
And each one of them has had something that was useful and valuable, to add to my awareness.
is there any other advice that you would give to someone entering the leadership, speaking, personal development space on, maybe they're just starting out, that you wish you knew when you were starting?
Just be authentic. Be yourself. Gee, folks, I'm really scared. This is the first speech I've ever given. I'm really scared. Can you forgive me? People resonate with that. You connect with people when you're authentic.
Yeah. What has been your biggest challenge or struggle, either today or in the past several years, after GTD?
Hmm? How to keep it going, how to spread it worldwide, how to scale it. It's not so much a struggle. It's just been the opportunity and the opportunities to, how do we do that? So that's a lot of what Catherine and I are working on.
Do you have any regrets in life?
No,
Oh, that's awesome. Well, David, I just want to thank you for talking to me. If there's anything else, we talked about quite a lot, but if there's anything else that you'd like to talk about, let me know.
all good. Thanks,
Awesome.
Evan.
Yeah. Thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it. And definitely recommend David's book to anybody out there looking to simplify their life. It's a lot of, it sounds very simple, but when executed, it really helps. And even from a mental health perspective, it helps a lot just emptying your mind. So, David, thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks for the
Appreciate it.
invitation. Yay.
Appreciate it.